Elias Varick had always preferred the quiet of the outer rim. After decades of military service, he found solace in a small outpost on the fringes of human-controlled space. The outpost wasn't much: a few reinforced habitats, solar arrays stretching into the wind, and the soft hum of life support systems. It was the kind of place where a man could think, fix machines, and remember what it felt like to be human. Out here, far from crowded stations and political scheming, the stars seemed endless, and life was simple. He had spent the day repairing a malfunctioning terraforming drone. It had a snapped rotor, and he had spent hours soldering circuits and calibrating sensors. By the time night fell, the outpost glowed softly under the twin moons of the barren planet, casting long shadows that shifted with the wind. Elias was tired. His hands were smudged with grease, his uniform marked with streaks of dirt. He poured himself a cup of synthetic coffee and leaned against the doorframe of his small habitat, staring at the stars when a sound broke the stillness. At first it was faint, a soft scuffling across the rocky ground. He frowned, setting the cup down. Out here the wind could make strange noises, but this had a rhythm, a life to it. The scuffling grew closer, and then he heard the faint hiss of escaping air. Elias' instincts, honed over decades, took over. He grabbed the plasma sidearm from the wall and stepped outside, his boots crunching on the gravel. There, sprawled on the ground, was a creature unlike any he had seen before. It was humanoid but taller and thinner than a human, with elongated limbs that ended in delicate fingers. Its skin shimmered faintly under the moon's light, a mix of silver and deep blue. Plates of armor, scorched and torn, clung to its body. Smoke drifted from small burns across its chest and shoulders. The alien's head lolled to one side, and its eyes, glowing faintly, focused on him with a mixture of fear and something Elias couldn't identify: urgency, perhaps desperation. He raised his weapon, heart thumping. He had trained for first contact, for hostile encounters with beings far stronger than humans. But he had never trained for this. It didn't attack. It didn't even move toward him. It simply lay there, weak, struggling to lift a hand. Elias took a cautious step forward. "Who are you?" he asked, keeping his voice calm, steady. The alien's eyes flickered. A faint sound escaped its mouth, not words, but a kind of high-pitched hum. It repeated once, then stopped, trembling. Elias lowered his sidearm slightly, his mind racing. Military protocol would say eliminate threats first, question later. But something about the creature's vulnerability struck him. He crouched and pulled a medkit from his pack. His hands worked with practiced efficiency, checking wounds, applying antiseptic, and closing a deep tear in the alien's armor. The creature flinched at first but did not resist. Its breathing was shallow, irregular, and Elias realized that it might not survive long outside proper medical care. "You're hurt bad," he said quietly. "If you stay out here, you'll die." For a moment, the alien's glowing eyes seemed to search his own, as if trying to read his thoughts. Then it reached out, trembling, and placed a hand on his arm. Elias' training screamed caution. Anyone could be an assassin, and he had seen enough to know that aliens often had motives humans couldn't understand. Yet there was something in its gesture, a plea, fragile and honest, that made him pause. He carried the creature inside, careful not to jostle it too much. The outpost's habitat was small, but it had a medical bay, minimal but enough to stabilize a human, or perhaps, as he was learning, an alien. He set it down on a cot and began examining injuries more closely. The armor had multiple burn marks, possibly from plasma weapons, and there were deep cuts that suggested a violent struggle. The alien's hums grew louder as he worked, almost as if responding to his touch. Elias realized it was trying to communicate, but the sounds were unlike any language he had encountered. He retrieved a data pad and began drawing simple symbols: water, food, danger. The alien watched, its head tilting slightly as if studying the shapes. Finally, it mimicked one of the symbols with a shaky hand. Elias smiled faintly. Communication, slow and basic, was possible. "Do you want water?" he asked, filling a cup and holding it to its lips. The alien took it hesitantly, the first sign of trust. Hours passed. Outside, the wind howled across the barren landscape. Inside, Elias worked quietly, patching wounds and setting up a small bed by the heater. He watched as the alien's breathing evened out. Though he had questions, how it had come here, why it looked like it wanted him dead, he also felt something unfamiliar, a sense of duty. Not as a soldier, but as a human capable of mercy. Finally, the alien spoke, its voice low and broken, more a series of clicks and hums than words. Elias listened carefully. He couldn't understand the full meaning, but he caught fragments. Mission, target, failure, danger, others coming. He froze. Target, danger, others. The pieces came together slowly. This wasn't a random accident. The alien had been sent here with a purpose, and that purpose involved him. He stepped back and studied the creature, now lying still with exhaustion pressing down on it. Could he really trust it? Could he trust himself to make the right decision? Military training told him to eliminate the threat immediately, but the human part of him, the part that survived countless wars not just with skill but with ingenuity and compassion, argued differently. Night passed slowly. Elias kept watch, listening to the alien's shallow breaths and the wind outside. Every sound made him tense. Every shift of the alien's body reminded him of the stakes. He began running through scenarios in his head, planning for the possibility that more enemies were on the way. He didn't know what the aliens' people were capable of, but he knew one thing. Humans had a way of surviving, of turning disadvantage into opportunity. Morning light filtered through the reinforced windows. The alien stirred, weakly lifting its head. Its eyes met his again, glowing faintly with something like recognition. Elias knelt beside it, offering a small smile. "You're alive," he said simply. The alien's hand twitched, pointing toward the window. Outside, a glint of metal caught the sunlight. Small, fast-moving ships, he realized, hovered just beyond the ridge. They were not human. Elias' heart raced. The alien's warnings had been real. She hadn't come alone, and whatever force sent her would not give up easily. He knew he had minutes, perhaps seconds, to act. The outpost, quiet and safe for so long, was about to become a battlefield. He glanced at the alien, still weak, still injured. She was an enemy, technically. Her mission was likely to kill him, yet she had survived, and now her survival depended on him. Elias gritted his teeth and made a decision that would define not just the night, but the kind of human he was. He would give her a chance. As he moved to secure the outpost's defenses, he felt a spark of determination. Humans might not be the strongest or the fastest, but they were clever, resourceful, and capable of mercy, even when it seemed impossible. That mercy, he realized, could become their greatest weapon. Outside, the alien shifted, her glowing eyes following him. Despite everything, there was a trace of trust there. And in the quiet corners of the galaxy, that small spark of trust could mean the difference between survival and destruction. Elias prepared for the coming storm, knowing that whatever happened next, humans had a way of turning even desperation into triumph. The enemy ships descended slowly toward the ridge, their engines humming like distant thunder. Inside the outpost, Elias checked his weapons, sealed the doors, and turned back to the alien. "You're going to be okay," he said, more to himself than to her. The alien's hand moved slightly, a faint gesture of gratitude, though Elias knew she couldn't speak the words. But words were not needed. The understanding between them was clear. Survival, for now, depended on unity. And in that quiet moment, amidst the stars and the wind, humanity showed once again that strength was not just in firepower or technology, but in courage, ingenuity, and mercy. The morning light revealed more than Elias had hoped. The ridge above his outpost was dotted with small ships, sleek and silent, waiting like predators. His heart tightened, but his mind went into overdrive. He had spent years on the edge of human territory, learning how to make the most of limited resources. Now every skill, every scrap of knowledge would be tested. He turned to the alien. She was still weak, her breathing shallow, but she watched the approaching ships with sharp, calculating eyes. Her movements were slow, but her intelligence was clear. She was dangerous when fully capable, he realized, yet now she depended entirely on him. Elias began assessing the outpost's defenses. It was simple, mostly designed to keep dust storms and wildlife at bay, not armed invaders. But he had tools. Old mining drones, energy barriers, and a few stored plasma turrets could be repurposed. He worked quickly, rewiring circuits and activating sensors, while keeping one eye on the approaching enemy. The alien followed his actions closely. She tried to communicate, pointing at various turrets and muttering clicks and hums. Elias understood some of her gestures. She was suggesting strategies, positions to cover possible traps. Though she was injured, her mind remained sharp. He smiled faintly. Even in her weakened state, she was thinking like a tactician. "Looks like we're on the same side, at least for now," he said, his tone dry but calm. She responded with a slight nod, barely perceptible, but it was enough. Minutes turned into an hour as Elias and the alien prepared. They used the outpost's terrain to their advantage. Rocks and metal crates were moved to create barricades and choke points. Drones were programmed to patrol predetermined paths, activating alarms and engaging intruders. Plasma turrets, though old, were set to semi-automatic mode, covering corridors and approaches. As the enemy ships landed on the ridge, the hum of engines growing louder, Elias felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. This was more than survival. It was a test of human ingenuity against superior technology. He glanced at the alien, who attempted to lift herself onto one of the control consoles. Her movements were slow, painful, but determined. The first enemy team approached on foot, sleek armor glinting in the sunlight. They were humanoid but taller and more muscular than humans, with advanced weaponry that hummed with energy. Elias stayed hidden, watching their approach, his mind racing for ways to gain an advantage. He realized the human edge lay not in strength but in thinking ahead. He activated a drone near the cliff edge. Its small, spinning arms were equipped with energy nets. It shot upward, tangling the leading enemy in glowing filaments, pulling him off balance. Elias fired the plasma turret remotely, striking the next intruder just as he reached the barricade. The alien hissed softly in approval, pointing to a different path, suggesting another weak spot in the enemy's formation. Elias adjusted the turrets and traps. He noticed the enemy was regrouping, trying to flank the outpost. Using the terrain, he created false trails and distractions. Rocks rolled down slopes, tripping some intruders. Dust and sand obscured vision, giving them a temporary advantage. Despite being outnumbered, Elias and the alien moved like a single unit. She pointed out flaws in the enemy's formation, and he exploited them. Each drone strike, each trap triggered, slowed the attackers. The aliens' limited energy blasts, though weak, were directed with precision to disable weapons and shields. The combination of human creativity and alien skill turned the tide of this initial assault. Hours passed. The sun moved across the sky, and the enemy showed signs of frustration. They were not used to being outsmarted by a smaller, seemingly weaker force. Elias realized that humans had an unusual trait, the ability to adapt quickly, to turn limited resources into effective solutions. Each time the intruders found a new path, he anticipated it, repositioning drones, moving barricades, and improvising with whatever he had. The alien, now sitting upright, pointed toward the main ridge. More ships were descending, faster this time, likely reinforcements. Elias knew they couldn't hold forever, but humans had another advantage, boldness. They could take risks that others might avoid. "Ready?" he asked. The alien gave a faint nod. Together, they activated the final trap. A network of plasma nets stretched across the main approach, hidden under debris. The first reinforcements stepped into it, triggering alarms and entangling themselves. Confusion spread among the attackers, giving Elias and the alien precious seconds. Using those seconds, they launched a counterattack. Drones swooped down, striking with nets and energy pulses. Turrets fired precise shots, targeting exposed areas of armor. The alien moved faster now, her strength returning slightly as adrenaline surged. She fired calculated blasts, knocking several intruders off balance. Elias felt a surge of pride. Humans could be underestimated, but their resourcefulness made them formidable. Despite the chaos, Elias remained focused. He used sound and light signals to coordinate with the alien, guiding her through corridors and positioning drones effectively. The intruders, frustrated by the unexpected tactics, began to retreat. Their superior numbers and firepower couldn't overcome the clever combination of terrain, traps, and human ingenuity. The battle continued for hours, with brief pauses as the enemy regrouped. Elias noticed that their tactics were rigid, predictable. He adapted constantly, moving drones and recalibrating turrets. The alien's strategic suggestions became more precise, showing that even weakened, she could think like a seasoned commander. Together, they were more than a human and a wounded alien. They were a unit capable of extraordinary results. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, the final wave approached. Elias and the alien, exhausted but resolute, prepared for the last confrontation. He activated a series of traps he had been saving, using the element of surprise. The intruders, expecting straightforward resistance, were caught off guard. Plasma nets, falling debris, and energy pulses created chaos among them. Elias and the alien moved with precision, disabling weapons and driving back the attackers. They worked in perfect synchronization, each action reinforcing the other's efforts. For the first time, Elias realized the full potential of combining human creativity with alien knowledge. Their teamwork had turned what seemed like certain defeat into a manageable challenge. Finally, the enemy retreated, leaving the outpost battered but standing. Elias lowered his plasma sidearm, breathing heavily. The alien leaned against the wall, still catching her breath. Though she was weak, she looked at him with a new sense of respect. Survival had been achieved, not through brute force but through intelligence, courage, and cooperation. Elias surveyed the scene. The outpost had sustained damage, but every improvised trap and strategic move had paid off. Humans, he thought, were extraordinary not because of raw strength, but because of their ability to think, to adapt, and to act with courage even in impossible situations. The alien, despite being trained to kill, had seen it firsthand. "Not bad for a human," she said, her voice low but clear, a small hint of humor in it. Elias smiled. "Not bad for a wounded assassin either," he replied. Night fell over the outpost. The stars shone brightly above, indifferent to the struggle below. Elias tended to the alien's wounds again, using the calm after battle to stabilize her further. She watched him, acknowledging silently that her survival was now tied to a species she had once been sent to harm. For Elias, the lesson was clear. Strength came in many forms, and humans, when pushed to the edge, could become something extraordinary. They could survive, outthink, and even inspire respect in the most dangerous of beings. Mercy, ingenuity, and courage were weapons as powerful as any gun or energy shield. As the night deepened, the alien finally rested, her breathing steady. Elias kept watch by the window, alert but calm. He knew this was only a temporary reprieve. More challenges would come, more enemies would seek the bounty on his head. But he also knew something else. Humans had a way of turning even the bleakest situations into triumphs. He allowed himself a small moment of pride. Today, they had survived. Together, a human and an alien, they had turned the tide against superior numbers. Tomorrow, they would need to plan for what came next. But for now, Elias felt the quiet satisfaction of victory, earned through cleverness, courage, and a willingness to act with mercy. Somewhere in the galaxy, others would hear of this. A human outpost held against impossible odds, using brains instead of brawn, turning a foe into an ally. And Elias knew, deep in his heart, that humans were only beginning to show what they could achieve. The stars continued to shine, silent witnesses to human ingenuity. And as he watched, Elias realized that even in the darkest corners of the universe, humanity had a way of leaving its mark, not through violence, but through courage, intelligence, and the unyielding will to survive. The night had passed quietly, leaving the outpost battered but intact. Elias Varick stood at the observation window, staring at the stars above. The twin moons of the barren planet reflected faintly on the rocky surface outside. The alien, whose name he still didn't know, lay resting on the cot he had prepared. She had recovered slightly, though the burns and wounds across her body still throbbed. Her breathing was steady now, and though her eyes still glowed faintly, there was a hint of calm and gratitude in them. Elias knew that their battle had been just one part of a much larger war. The alien's mission had been to assassinate him, but she had failed because of circumstance, and perhaps because of him. He had given her mercy, and in doing so, he had made a choice that could alter the course of events not only on this planet but across the galaxy. He had shown her that humans could be more than their weapons, that courage and intelligence could survive where brute force might fail. By morning, the alien had regained enough strength to sit upright. She tested her legs, moving slowly, wincing from the burns but determined. Elias handed her water and some synthesized food, and she accepted it with careful movements. She studied the room with curious, calculating eyes, her hands hovering over the equipment as if weighing options. Elias realized that though she had been sent to kill him, she was also a soldier, trained for survival, strategy, and leadership. He spoke quietly, aware that the alien understood more than she let on. "You should rest more, but you can stand if you need to. There are more of your kind out there, aren't there?" Her gaze shifted toward the ridge. She made soft sounds, a mixture of clicks and hums pointing toward the horizon. Elias followed her gestures and understood reinforcements would come faster and stronger. She was warning him, acknowledging the threat. In her own way, she was cooperating, showing trust. Elias nodded. Then we need a plan, not just to survive, but to control what happens next. For hours, they worked together. He showed her the layout of the outpost, the placement of drones, and the improvised traps. She responded with gestures, pointing out weak spots in their defenses and suggesting subtle improvements. Even in her weakened state, she was sharp, able to analyze and strategize. He realized that humans were not the only clever species in the galaxy, but their advantage lay in adaptability. Where machines or rigid protocols failed, humans could improvise, think ahead, and combine compassion with tactics. By midday, the alien had rested enough to move more confidently. Elias watched as she examined the drones, adjusting circuits and power settings with surprisingly delicate movements. She spoke a few words in her own language, clicks that Elias could not understand, but the tone conveyed determination. For the first time, he sensed a shift in her perspective. She no longer viewed him as prey, but as an ally or, at least, a being worthy of respect. They prepared for the inevitable arrival of more enemies. Elias set up defensive points, recalibrated plasma turrets, and organized patrol routes for the drones. He had learned to think like a general, to anticipate the enemy's movements and exploit weaknesses. The alien, despite her injuries, had contributed valuable insights, guiding him in ways he could not have imagined. Together, they were stronger than they had been alone. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, the first signs of the approaching fleet appeared. Small glimmers of metal reflected the fading light, and the hum of engines carried faintly on the wind. Elias' pulse quickened, but he remained calm. Humans were not fearless, but they were clever. Fear sharpened their senses, made them quick and resourceful. He checked his sidearm and plasma turrets, then turned to the alien. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded, her movements deliberate. Elias knew that no matter what happened, she had learned the value of mercy and cooperation. Her mission had been to kill him, yet she now fought alongside him, not against him. This was proof of something he had always believed. Humans could inspire change, even in the most dangerous beings. The enemy fleet descended swiftly, dropping teams of armed soldiers onto the ridge. They moved with precision, clearly trained, but Elias had prepared. He activated the drones, sending them to patrol paths that created confusion and slowed the intruders. Plasma turrets opened fire, targeting weak points in their armor. Rocks and debris were triggered to roll down slopes, tripping and disorienting the enemy. The alien contributed as well, her energy blasts precise despite her weakened condition. She aimed at critical targets, shields, weapons, and movement patterns, disabling them with minimal effort. Together, they created a web of defenses, turning the outpost into a maze of traps and hazards. The enemy advanced cautiously, aware that each step could be their last. Hours passed in tense combat. Elias remained focused, guiding drones and adjusting turret angles. He used light and sound signals to coordinate with the alien, exploiting her knowledge of strategy and combat. They were a team now, combining human creativity with alien precision. The enemy, though superior in numbers and technology, could not predict their moves. Every attempt to flank or overrun them was countered by careful planning and adaptability. As night fell, the final wave of enemy forces approached. Elias and the alien had anticipated this, setting their strongest traps and positioning themselves for maximum effect. The intruders stepped into plasma nets, energy pulses knocked weapons offline, and falling debris caused chaos. The alien moved with renewed strength, her blasts precise, each strike calculated. Elias used drones and turrets to amplify her impact, creating the illusion of a larger force. The enemy, frustrated and overwhelmed, began to retreat. Elias watched as they fled back to their ships, their organized assault reduced to chaos. For a moment, silence returned to the outpost. The wind blew softly, carrying the scent of scorched metal and dust. Elias exhaled, relief washing over him. They had survived not through brute force, but through intelligence, courage, and cooperation. The alien looked at him, her glowing eyes conveying something unspoken. Elias understood without words. She had seen what humans were capable of. They could survive against impossible odds, outthink enemies far stronger than themselves, and even inspire trust and loyalty through mercy. "You saved my life," she said, her voice low but steady. Elias shook his head. "No, we saved each other," he replied. I gave you a chance and you made the choice to fight alongside me. That's what humans do. We adapt, we survive, and we help when we can. Over the next few days, they repaired the outpost, tended to injuries, and prepared for potential follow-up attacks. The alien regained more strength each day, and though she could no longer carry weapons like before, her mind remained sharp. She shared details of her planet, the political conflicts that had sent her after Elias, and the assassination orders she had been given. Elias listened carefully, understanding the wider picture. He made a decision. When she was fully recovered, he would let her go. She had been an assassin, yes, but now she had the opportunity to change the course of events on her planet. She had seen humans not as prey, but as equals capable of wisdom, courage, and mercy. That experience might influence her actions, saving countless lives in the process. When the time came, the alien stood at the edge of the outpost, ready to return to her fleet. Elias handed her supplies, weapons, and a small device he had modified to aid in navigation. She looked at him, her eyes glowing with gratitude and respect. "I will not forget what you have done," she said. Elias nodded. "Then go," he said simply. "Live and make better choices than the ones that brought you here." She hesitated, then turned and activated her ship. It rose smoothly into the sky, leaving the outpost behind. Elias watched until it became a small glimmer among the stars. For the first time in many years, he felt a deep sense of peace. He had acted with courage, intelligence, and mercy, and in doing so had left a mark on someone who could influence events far beyond his small world. Elias returned to his daily routines, repairing drones, maintaining equipment, and watching the stars. But he carried a new understanding with him. Humans were extraordinary not because of their strength, but because of their choices. Courage, ingenuity, and compassion could alter destinies, even in the farthest reaches of space. Word would spread, in small whispers and rumors across the galaxy, of a human who survived impossible odds, who fought with intelligence, who gave mercy when none was expected. Other species would come to learn that humans could not be underestimated. They could outthink, outmaneuver, and even inspire change in the most dangerous adversaries. Elias often thought of the alien, wondering if she had returned safely, if she had used her influence wisely. He hoped that humans had earned her respect and trust. That alone, he realized, was a victory beyond the battles fought at the outpost. In the quiet nights that followed, the outpost became more than a station on a remote planet. It became a symbol of human resilience, a testament to the power of intelligence and mercy. And Elias, standing at the observation window, knew that humans were capable of far more than they, or anyone else, had ever imagined. No matter how dark the galaxy became, humanity had a way of surviving, inspiring, and changing the course of history, not with weapons alone, but with courage, wisdom, and the choice to act with mercy. And in that truth lay the real strength of his species.